Hi, it's Neve and welcome to video 2 of the series. I'm just out here checking the post and getting a breath of fresh air before we sit down and do our training. We have a ton to cover today, but first I want to say thank you guys so much for the amazing comments and feedback and messages I received about video 1. It obviously struck a real chord and I appreciate so much having this conversation with you and being able to just say, hey look, this is how it actually is. So if you haven't seen video 1 yet, you'll find the link up there. Go and watch that first because that will really help you understand why the process works. And the process is what we're digging into today with the step 1 and step 2 of that process. So do watch that. It's raining a bit, so I'm going to get inside. So this really all starts with potatoes. You see, some time ago I was watching a program where a woman stood in front of an array of potatoes and began to cry because she could not decide which potato to buy. Now that sounds totally ludicrous and like, well, just pick up a potato, put it in your cart and move on. But the thing is that the reason why she couldn't make a decision is key in understanding why the process starts with stage 1, connect and align. You see, this is all about how we decide. Now, most of us think that we make decisions purely on logic. Do I want to go to the store and buy milk, or do I want to stay home and use that time to work on a website? On the one hand, you might be going, well, the kids really need to have milk for their breakfast, and what if there's no breakfast tomorrow? And on the other hand, you're going, well, if I don't do my website, then it's not going to be pulled forward, and then I'm not going to be able to create what I'm trying to create over here. You have this sort of battle, right? And how we decide in the end is really by the other system in our brain and body kicking in, which is the emotional system. Now, the emotional system incorporates your whole body, all the signals that it's getting from the body about how it's feeling. And then what the emotional side does is it weighs in on the final decision. So you have these different neural networks competing over what decision should be made. And in the end, your emotional system comes in and plunks down on which one it feels like. Interestingly, studies have shown that when you make a decision, you decide before you've even logically figured it out. Your emotional system has made the decision, and then your logical mind can tell you why. Your logical mind can explain the decision in a very logical way when really it was your emotions that made it. Now, the logical mind brings in the possibilities of what to do, and then the emotional side is the one that decides which one to do. Right? So when you go back to this woman standing in front of the potatoes, the problem is that she has been in an accident where she had brain damage that only made it so that her logical system and her emotional system could no longer communicate with each other. They're still both there, but she began to be unable to make decisions because she could not plunk down on anything in the end. She would be there going, do I want size? Do I want color? I don't know. She didn't know what she felt like, so she couldn't make a decision. Now, this actually goes even deeper than just, the emotions help you make a decision. You see, there's two sides of you, and aligning these two sides of you is what will allow you to create a business that you love, but that still works. So on the one hand, you have your logical self. This is also called the conscious mind. Quite often it's called the ego or your social self. This is the side of you that you created when you were young in order to help you deal with being in the world. These are the set of strategies that you created. So when you're a baby and you see your mother and maybe you're crying and then she has kind of a negative reaction to you crying. And then you notice that when you smile, she responds positively too. And you go, ooh, okay, if I want mommy to smile, I smile. You begin to learn all these different strategies to get what you want and to feel okay and safe in your world. So this is very much thoughts-based. It's mostly prefrontal cortex conscious thinking. This controls the action, as in what possibilities, remember back in the last slide, looking at the logical brain brings in the different possibilities for action, is what can we do in a given situation? And the logical self, the highest aim is to fit in and stay safe. The logical mind really, really wants you to be socially accepted. It wants you to have the safety of community. It's looking after you, and the logical side is sort of personified as smart. This is the side that figures things out, figures out what you're supposed to do, and then go do that. Right? So the logical self controls the logical neural systems, which is mostly prefrontal cortex, but also fear, because a lot of your thoughts about possibilities trigger that emotional state of fear. So it does tie into the emotions in that way, that your thoughts absolutely can trigger emotions, but it's mostly driven by thoughts. Now, on the other hand, you have your core self. Now, this is your subconscious mind, but it's also your essential self. This is who you are inside. And it's not so much a set of thinking as it is a being, a sense of being you. Now, when you're young, you're entirely your essential self. You make the decisions based on what it is that you feel like doing. So you might pick up a pen and go, you know what, I really want to see what happens if I draw all over this wall. You're making, maybe someone tells you you can't do what you want to do, and you freak out and start screaming and crying because you're like, but that's all I wanted to do. So this is very much like your it's kind of like your inner child, but it's who you really are at your core. Now, obviously, these two work really well together, because if you were just your core self, you'd be running around doing whatever the heck you felt like, never actually bringing yourself forward and never actually being able to work within the outside world and the community that you're in. Now, your core self is very much feelings based. It's much more how you feel, your emotions, and the things that are going on in your body. This also controls the energy, okay? And we're going to look at that in a second. The highest aim of the core self is to feel fulfilled and on purpose. So this is where that calling comes in. Pretty much everyone, no matter whether you are, someone who has a product, who has an idea, or just has a feeling, almost everyone here has that sense that you're called to do something greater. That's your core self saying, I need to be expressed. I need to be me. The core self is personified as being wise and controls the emotional neural systems and the emotional systems in the body. Okay, now what's really interesting is how your core self communicates. Now this is really when you're off track. Because, we looked at, in the last video, we looked at following that Mr. Blue path and how you always end up looping back because you hit a brick wall. The brick wall is your core self saying no. So your logical mind says, okay, I'm going to start a business. Let's go find a path. Okay, Mr. Blue says do this and this and this. I'm going to go do that and that and that. And your core self, which controls the energy that you have and your decision making, says no. Right? Now, the way that it says no is in multiple different ways. So energy, usually cutting you off from energy so you feel lethargic, lowering your immune system. You might get colds, you might get forgetful, you might make really dumb mistakes and not know why you're making them. Self-sabotaging behaviors like accidentally, saying something that means that you can't actually get hired by the person who you think you want to be hired by. Fight or flight. Addiction is a huge one, because if your core self doesn't get to feel fulfilled, it's going to find other ways to feel good, like going and sitting and eating a tub of Ben & Jerry's, or going and watching TV all day. It's going to try and find ways to feel good because you're cutting it off from feeling good by telling it has to do something that feels not right. Inappropriate moods, so sudden anger, sudden tears, sudden just like not feeling great and not knowing why. This is all your core self saying, not this. I want to do something different. Now, this doesn't mean you have to read into big stories. Oh, if I get sick ever, that means I'm on the wrong path. Not at all. But this is how your core self really puts on the brakes when it feels like you're on that wrong path, sets up that brick wall so you bounce off and end up back at the start again, right? So then how can you make decisions that help you move forward powerfully? And it's really, looking at what happens when you don't bring the two together. Well, if you are just basing your decision on your core self, you'll find yourself feeling guilty and anxious. So if you're doing something that you're like, your logic is saying, I should be working on a website, and your core is saying, I don't want to do that, I feel like watching TV, and you go and you watch the TV, you are going to spend that entire time feeling guilty, feeling anxious, feeling like disturbed. Your brain will still be chattering at you because your logical mind controls the thoughts. It'll keep going, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I am wrong, I am bad, all these things that we say to ourselves. It's not very kind often. Now, on the other hand, if you make decisions purely based on logic, if you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do, I'm going to use willpower to force my core self to go along, you will find yourself feeling resentful and angry. You'll find that self-sabotage is happening, you're feeling very low energy, and it feels like pushing. Sometimes it feels like walking through mud. The amount of energy that it takes to do stuff that your core self doesn't want to do, oh man. So in the middle, when you make the decision where your core self is aligned and your logical self is aligned, you have access to peace and power. Excuse me. And that's how you actually know that it's a good decision, because of the peace that you feel in your heart and the power that you have when your energy lines up with a logical plan of what you want to do. So in order to make those decisions that are aligned, we first need to open up communication between your core self and your logical self. And the best way to start is with yes and no, understanding how your core self says yes and no. Because otherwise it's just going to keep slamming on the brakes and you won't know until it's too late that something wasn't right for you. So in understanding how to know your yes and no, it's realizing that your body knows the answer. Your body is how your core self communicates, because that's where the emotions and the feelings live, right? So you can begin to understand how your body feels yes and how your body feels no, and also how your body demonstrates fear, so that you can distinguish between those three and be able to make decisions that are aligned for you. So the first way is through the internal check. Now, the internal check is quite simple, but it takes a little bit of practice. Internal check is sitting very still, getting into a slightly meditative state, like eyes closed, slow breathing, and just focusing your attention into your body. And then remembering a time when the answer for you was yes. So it might be a decision that you made that was just totally and utterly right for you. And remembering that time, you'll be able to get back into the feeling. Ask yourself how your body felt when you made that decision. If you have trouble remembering a time, you can try something that is a yes-no answer right now, like, do I love my children? Might be a huge yes, and so you can begin to feel how yes feels. For me, yes feels very open, right in the center of my chest. It feels very blank, actually. It doesn't feel like it's just like, clean, right, The second is to look at a time when it was no, and this is particularly helpful if you find a time where you actually made a decision based on logic that was so not right for you, and you can think back into actually making the decision and think back into what it was, and really get yourself into the feeling place of what it was, and look at what's going on inside your body. And that will be your no. For me, no feels like clenching right in the center of my chest, really tight. Okay. So for you, it might be different. For many people, it's that sort of open or clenching in the chest area. Okay. Now, and I'm rushing through this. Do this in your own time because it's so worth it, but I really want to make sure we cover everything today. Now then you want to think of you want to discover how fear feels in your body. So go to a time when it was a yes, but. So you knew the answer that your core wanted, but there was some reason, some logical thing that was holding you back from doing something. It's almost always a logical fear. And think back to how your body felt. So for me, when I have a yes, but, it feels very open in my chest, but right around in the lungs, I feel tight in the lungs. I feel slightly just nauseous in the gut. Okay, so you're going to find your own yes, no, or fear. Do this several times until you really get keyed into it, and then start to do it in your regular day-to-day life. Do I want a coffee? Do I, want to go to the park? And you'll find that you get clearer and clearer on how your yes and your no feels. And if you can get really clear on the difference between no and fear in your body, you will find it so much easier for you to make decisions, because then when a fear pops up, you can deal with the belief that's underlying the fear that's making it get in the way. Now, the sway test is a kind of an even clearer way to get a yes or a no, and this works particularly well if you're a little bit skeptical skeptical about the whole your body knows the answer thing. So what you want to do is stand quite firmly on your 2 feet. Stand very freely away from anything, and you want to ask yourself questions. So the first best question to ask, is my name? And then insert your name there. You stand very firmly, and then you breathe in and out very slowly for a couple of goes. And then on one of the out breaths, you'll feel yourself gently being pulled forward or feeling like you're being pushed backward. So you'll sway either forward or backward. Now, most people sway forward for a yes, but you might sway backwards. So that's why you have to do the test. The second question to ask is someone else's name. So you can stand there and go again, eyes closed, very focused, and ask yourself, is my name Neve? Breathe in deeply and out, and breathe in deeply and out, and then allow yourself to just either gently be pulled forward or gently be pushed backward. Now that will be your no. Now you know a very, very clear yes or no. This, I've seen people, teach this to their skeptical partners and be totally shocked how well it works. This is great for very, very simple yes, no answers. You just have to have room to stand up. And finally, there's light and heavy. So it's simply just asking yourself, does this decision feel light? Does this decision feel heavy? That one I don't feel as clear on, but for many people that really works. And then the final way to communicate with your core self is through direct conversation. Because, it's one thing to know yes and no, and then your logical brain can keep bringing ideas and your core self can say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. But what's even better is when you can get your core telling you what is right for you, because often what's right for you is something that's never even occurred to your logical brain because you're so busy thinking, well, this is what other people say to do, and this is what I should do, that you never realize that there's this whole thing over here that you really want to do. So direct conversation comes through free writing and lists, and we're going to do this in a minute, so I'll explain it then. So that, really why stage 1, connect and align, is so important is if we look back at this path that we're attempting to take, this journey into uncharted territory, connecting to your core self is really gaining access to the fuel. This is the energy that will bring you along the journey, and I like to think of the core self as being your compass. This is the thing that tells you when you're off and when you're back on. So while you might wander around on your path and be a little squiggly, it will continually bring you back onto what's yes, what's yes, what's yes. Now, on the other hand, the direction where you want to end up in happy success land is totally logic and core. So when your logical side and your core side agree, yes, this is where I want to go, you access that peace, you access that power, and you have the direction to move forward powerfully. It's not about rejecting one or the other. It's about bringing the two sides together so that you can know what to do and have the energy to do it. Okay, so that's why stage 1, connect and align, is vital. So really the big principle we've been talking about here is that you have energy and direction when you align every part of your business to your core self and then bring it into the world through the structures you can find with your logical self. Okay, so the big structure to harness this big principle here is the business wheel. Now, the business wheel is ensuring that every aspect of your business aligns to you. You and your connection with yourself, your logical side and your core side together represent the hub of your business, and this is vital. Now, once you have you at the center, you can arrange the pieces around you in a way that fit you and that also work and harmonize with each other. So you can have marketing that feels good, an audience you actually like talking to, a message that represents what you really want to say in the world, and an income stream that is an expression of who you are. And then this big business wheel helps us to move into stage 2, which is extracting the various aspects of your business from you, from who you are, so that these all line up for you. Okay, so the extraction process is twofold. The first step is to understand the big principles underlying each aspect of the business wheel. When you understand how income works, it really opens up your mind to all the different things you could be doing, which you didn't realize when you had a strict set of rules. When you understand how people make buying decisions, all of a sudden you open up all this marketing that's free and exciting and easy and you, and not based on what someone else was doing. So understanding the principles is the first step. And then the second step is to use your core and logic communication to decide what's right for you in each area. Now, extraction is obviously, it's a huge stage. And remember we said in the first video, slow is fast. So you do want to go slow and get each piece right. Now, unfortunately, for the purposes of the video series, we don't have time to dig into the big principles of each of these aspects. You know, in my big course, I do a full module on each of these aspects. So for the purposes of this, I want to ensure that you get all 4 stages of the process. So we're simply going to narrow down stage 2 to focus in on your income stream. Now, if you already have an income stream, this is still going to help you understand the underlying principles and look at maybe there's ways that you can use that income stream that you hadn't thought of before. Maybe there's things that are even more you, other ways that it can be expressed as even more you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at that, and we are going to tie in audience and message, and then of course marketing will come into it in stages 3 and 4. So the big principle in income stream is that all income streams come from excess capacities or assets, things that you have in your life that are not being used to their full potential. So for example, in a job, you're selling your time. That same time would be spent at home, but not in the same sort of productive manner, hopefully. So when you go in, they ask you to use your time in a particular way and they pay you for it. On eBay, for example, you're selling items you don't want, maybe a book that's been sitting on your bookshelf and someone else would really love to read it, but you aren't actually using it. In coaching, you're selling time and expertise. Now, this is a real example of tapping into an excess capacity because you know some of the processes maybe that help people shift limiting beliefs in something that they're trying to do. They don't actually have access to that knowledge, so you don't just spend time with them, you also are allowing them to tap into the things that you know that help them to progress forward. So this is a capacity that right now is inside of you, but when you share it with someone else, they get this enormous benefit. So you want to think of this as allowing others to get the benefit of what you have. Okay, so to clarify this, let's look at some excess capacities. There's things like your experiences. This is a huge one. Your past jobs, industry experience, hobbies, situations you figured your way through, anything you're proud of doing, from planting a garden through to winning a Nobel Prize. Struggles. This is any time where you've solved a specific problem in your life, someone else probably has that same problem, and you can bring the benefit of your knowledge to their situation. Ability, hobbies, and skills. There's an enormous number of people who now, due to the internet and the structures available online, have art businesses, have hobby businesses, have craft businesses, have personalizing baby blankets businesses, where you have this hobby that someone else doesn't have the ability that you have to create the things you can create, so they can still have those beautiful things by tapping into your ability to do it. Things, cars, spare rooms, property, programs. These days, again, there's all kinds of structures to help you tap into the excess capacities here. You can rent a spare room on Airbnb. You can take a program on your computer. Say maybe you have Photoshop, and you also have a template for creating book covers, and then an author comes along and they don't have those two things. They don't want to have to buy a program, learn a program, and learn how to create a template. Instead, they can just pay you so that you use the program and send them back a template. You see what this is? They're tapping into what you have. Okay, you also have circumstances, time, money, location, type of home, the tasks you do, your networks. If you are selling someone else's product, so, there's affiliate marketing, there's all kinds of forms of marketing online. If you're selling someone else's product, you're really tapping into the excess capacity in your networks and connections and relationships. Now, maybe you have to build up your network in order to tap into it, but that is still what's happening. That company doesn't have access to those same people that you have access to. You make the connection and you get a commission. Your brain, ideas, training, and interests. So if you have training in a particular kind of healing modality, then you can bring that healing to other people. They don't have to go through the same training, but they can still have the benefit because you have this capacity. And it's a matter of learning how to connect that capacity to the person who can get the benefit. You can also combine these, so you can have a business where maybe you have time and you have a task that you do, like on a Thursday you go do your grocery shopping. But there's other people in your neighborhood who don't actually have time like you do. So they could, pay you to do shopping for them. Now that's just a really small example, and probably not anyone's dream business. However, it's really important to realize that you truly can, especially on the internet, find a structure to tap into almost any excess capacity you have. We had someone who went through our program last time that actually created a business around reading because she loved it. So you can see that there's all kinds of things here. So what you want to do now is to look into what you have. Now, when it does come to looking at your own excess capacities, just bear in mind, even if you already have a product or service, this extraction exercise will help you to see more of what you have. It really kind of helps crack your mind open a bit, which might introduce you to different structures that your business could take, or slightly different marketing processes that you have available that you didn't even realize. Now, we're not worrying about structures right now, and we're not worrying about marketing right now. Right now, it's all about just looking at what's there. So even if you already have a product or service, look at what your excess capacities are. And how we extract them is through the incredibly non-sexy but very real way to extract, which is, I wish there was a magic button you could press and you suddenly know what it is that you want to create a business from. But truthfully, this comes back to opening up the communication between core and logic using that free writing that we talked about, namely using a 50 things list, which is one of my favorite tools. So you sit down and write at the top of a piece of paper, I'm so happy and grateful now that I've discovered my ideal online income stream where I tapped into these excess capacities. And then just write. Write your experiences, write what you have, write what you've done, write what you know how to do, write your hobbies, write your interests, write all the different things that you have. Now, the point is to write as fast as you possibly can, because after about 10 ideas, you're going to get sort of tired out. Your logical brain is going to go, oh gosh, do I have to keep doing this? And it will sort of stop focusing on logical answers, and your core self will start coming up with answers. If you get to 50 and you're still going, just go. The point is to allow whatever to arise and go down on the piece of paper. Don't worry about it if it's something ridiculous, just keep writing. Then at the end, you want to take your pen or your pencil and just scroll along all the different things you've listed and circle those ones that sort of light up for you, that sort of jump out of the page and make you go, and get that peaceful feeling. Those are the ones that are potentially things that you want to create your income streams from. Now, we are going to look at the structures in our next video, and then from structuring your income stream and your business, then we're going to look at stage-based marketing and marketing from where you are. So make sure you do this exercise before the next video and comment below. Let us know how the sway test went for you. Let us know how the 50 things list went for you. Absolutely love to hear what is cracking open in your mind as you're going through this process. So I'm here in the park next to my house, which is really, really wet and rainy today, but it's kind of how I like it. I like tromping through the woods when you can hear all the rain falling through the trees and going on these sort of off the beaten track paths. In this park, most people go on the paved path, and I get to go where I want to go for one main reason, which is I have the right boots. I can go onto the trails I want to go on because I've got the right gear to walk on them without ending up with wet feet. And that really is what we're going to be looking at in the next video. It's how do you structure things so that you can have the business that you want that still works. How do you get the right structures in place? The other thing is, I'm walking in the park. I'm not climbing Mount Everest. I don't have the skills and the abilities that I would need to go on that particular trek. But I can go on a wonderful trek through the park that gives me everything that I want Because I'm starting where I am with the skills and abilities that I have. So those are the two things we're going to dig into next week. How to take, or next video, it's not next week, how to take the income streams and the excess capacities and use structures to make them work out there in the online space, and then looking at stage-based marketing, so you're doing marketing that works for where you are now. See you there.